We're focused on here. So as we're putting together this presentation and sharing the notes and what we learned from Bahubali and TPG and Alia Bhatt's Star Life, we came up with some key things. And I would encourage you to listen and understand, even if they seem simple, the idea of making hit games or good games is not easy, right? Because if it was, we'd all be making hit games, right? So Chirag's going to share some of those things. But before he starts, let me just give a short intro. So when I joined Moonfrog about 2 years ago, I met Chirag. He has matured and grown into what would arguably be called one of the best, if not the best, casino game designer in the country, right? So he's got some things he's going to share. I'm going to sit down and let him talk. So go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mark. So good afternoon, NGDC. Yeah, I hope you all had a nice lunch and you're all going to nicely fall asleep after eating all of that food. But yeah, so this is my first time doing one of these things, so be kind. My name is Chirag Ramchandani, and I'm a game designer at Moonfrog. Right now, currently, I run the Teen Pati Gold design team, and every day, honestly, I'm getting a little better and getting towards my goal of figuring out how to make great games for the Indian market. Yeah. So before I get started with everything, I know Anand tried this a little earlier, but I just want to get a feel of the audience. Game designers in the house, please raise your hands. Yeah, okay, not that many. What are the rest of you guys? Producers? No? No one from production. Oh, a couple over there. Engineers? Yeah, engineers, okay. Product folks? Okay, how about the rest of y'all? Are you just not interacting, or did I miss something? QA! We always forget QA. We love QA. Any QA? Hi guys, what's up? But what about the rest of you in the back? What do you guys do? Art! I'm sorry, guys. Artists. Yeah? Okay. All right, great. So let's get started. So these are our games, yeah, that I'm going to be talking about. We have Alia Bhatt Star Life, we have Bahubali the game, and we have Teen Pati Gold. Right? Hopefully, y'all have played all of these. Have y'all? Yes? And if y'all haven't, that's still okay. I'm still going to do a quick brief for each of them. So Alia Bhatt Star Life is a narrative adventure game, right, where the player experiences the life of being an upcoming Bollywood celebrity. It has heavy elements of Invest and Express, and of course it stars Alia Bhatt, right? The next one is Bahubali the game. You know, part of being a good game designer is being on point with pop culture, right? Like, why did Katappa kill Bahubali? It's something we got this answered, right? So to pair up with India's top-grossing film franchise, we made Bahubali the game, which is a real-time strategy game with elements of base building, player versus player combat, and amazing hero characters like Bahubali, Bhalal Deva, and Katappa. Right? Last is Teen Pati Gold. So most of you know what Teen Pati is, right? It's a super common Indian card game. Right? And Teen Pati Gold is our social casino version of it. So the game released in 2014. Since then, we've been making a lot of changes, additions. Most recently, we added Texas Hold'em Poker to it, and I'm going to talk about that a little more later. So, getting into the meat of it, right? What did we learn? These games together have about 40 million downloads, and we collect data points in the billions. And I'm going to share with you 5 things that we learned from our data and all our experiences while building these games, right? Point number 1, on narrative games. You know, most of you are thinking, narrative games, India, does that really work? Do people really read in games? Are they really consuming content? And you'd be surprised at the amount of content that was gone through in this game, the amount of lines that were written for this game. It's over, 40,000 lines? It's a small novel that's gone into this game. And what are 2 key factors when designing a narrative game? Any guesses? When designing any narrative, rather, what do you need?
Storyline.
Storyline, yeah. What else? Characters, perfect. Thanks, Mark. So you have your characters, and you have your story and your dialogues, right? Let's talk about characters, right? For us, it was a little easy figuring out who our main characters were, and that's because it was Alia Bhatt. And the next one is your player's avatar, right? So this is a good starting point for any narrative, not necessarily any game. You need a strong base to build on. and figuring out who your main characters are is step one there. The next thing you need to do is figure out recurring characters. This is a game, right? So you're going to need missions, quests, and where do these come from? They come from a set of recurring characters that are very firmly rooted in the universe of the game. This one being the publicist and the manager of the player's avatar, right? And the universe being the Indian film industry, so that tie is there, right? Think of these guys as like your dungeon master while playing D&D. They're the ones handing you your quests, figuring out what happens to you. You control your own fate though, but they help you along the way. Another fun thing you can do actually here that we did is play around a lot with the names. The guy on the left, his name is Ishan Joblekar, right? And the inspiration there comes from a Saif Ali Khan dialogue from Main Khiladi Tu Anari, right? Now look at the name again. What is it? Joe Bolekar. Joe Bolekar, that is, yeah, do what he says. He's your manager, do what he says. And these are really fun, small things that can add a lot of life and feel to the game when players actually realize that. They understand the depth of it, and you need to be smart about how you do this. If you mask it too heavily, people aren't going to understand it, they're not going to get it, and then it's just going to be lost, right? What else? You're not going to have just 4 characters in a game. You need a bunch of other characters. And one big rule of thumb here when designing characters for a game is, if I've seen him once or her once and I don't remember them, it didn't really work well. Like, look at these guys. Do you recognize any of them? KRK, I don't know who that is. Anyone else? Right? That's what I'm saying. So, you see them once and you get who they are. How do you do that? You do a cheap gimmick. Okay, not necessarily cheap. You do a gimmick. You do something about the way they dress, the way they act, the things they say. Just make them memorable. And the best way to validate this is just talk to people about it. Show it to other people around you. Because you think, everything you do, you think is going to be the best most of the time. And it's important to validate these smaller things. Right? That's it on characters. Moving on to the next bit, right? What's a character if he's not going to be talking? There has to be some amount of dialogue. And we face some real difficulty with this, trying to capture the essence of Alia and the other characters, because we had a very, very, very big constraint. Any guesses on what that was? English. Nice one, but we'll get to that. It's the character count. What do you think it should be? For each of these bubbles. Under 100. 100 is also a lot, right? It's about how players digest content. So you break it down into smaller, easier, bite-sized chunks for them. Make it easy for the player to digest the content that you're developing for them, right? And that's a very, very important thing. Someone said English, yeah. What if you're making a game for non-native English speakers? What are you going to do? Google Translate. I'm just going to read this out for you. Namaskar, Arjun. मैं मालिनी के साथ पार्टी के स्थानों पर I can't even say chalcha. Who uses this word? Right? Who talks like this? No one. So fine, your Google Translate didn't work. And I understand maybe you don't have all the resources. So what we did is we tried out using a translation agency. But if you notice, this speech bubble got bigger in this one in the presentation. And I had to do that. Because the translations from the agency that come back, they might not necessarily be in tune with your game because they don't understand full context, they don't understand everything about your game. So you really need to figure out how to do this in-house, right? That's the best way to go, at least from what we've seen. So what did we end up doing? We got a Hindi dialogue writer, right? And this one just reads as it should read. It's how someone would have a conversation, right? Put yourself in the player's shoes. Read it out, see if it makes sense, and yeah, if you do these things for the characters and as well for the dialogues, you're gonna have a really strong base for a good narrative game, right? Let's move to the next one. Talk to players. Sounds easy, no? Little audience interaction again. If you don't live in any of these cities currently, Ahmedabad, Bengaluru, Chennai, Delhi, Hyderabad, Kolkata, Mumbai or Pune, please raise your hand. How many is that? 2 people? No. Okay, let's say it's like 5% of the audience here, right? And what I'm trying to get at with this is, the whole talking to players bit, it might sound simple, and it is, and it should be, but still most of us won't do it, right? Why is that? There's like a block. So what we at Moonfrog do is we'll actually go out there. We sit in this nice fancy office in Bangalore, right? You guys should come check us out anyway, anytime you're in Bangalore. But you have to get out of that office space. You actually have to go to your players, because they're not going to come to you. All they're going to end up doing is leaving you ratings on the store that says, this is an amazing game, and give you 1 star. Right? That always ends up happening. And you just need to get out there. You got to go into their environment. You got to understand what they want, how they want it. And I'll give you a really simple example of how I do this on a day-to-day basis. Right? You guys take Uber or Ola, I'm assuming, yeah? Talk to your driver. It's something as simple as that. These guys have a lot of downtime, and we've seen that they play a lot of games. What do they play? Right? You might find these smaller learnings, like network drops, or your button hit areas are too small, or they didn't understand this feature that you developed, or the controls make no sense, and they actually want to play with one hand, or they only have one hand free, but your whole control scheme is based on 2 hands. Stuff like that. We even had a QA engineer once just roaming around the metro while testing a feature, just to check for network drops while people would be transiting. This statement, right? Understanding how your players are going to play your game. Otherwise, how are you supposed to make a great game for them, right? Sitting in a train in the Mumbai local train, you're probably holding on with one hand like that, trying to play something with your other hand. Like, I actually saw people playing Ludo like this. Auto roll in Ludo games is a great thing because of this, right? They just want to interact with the game, they want to play the game, but they might not be able to, so you need to make it simple for them. Another great example is, we've seen players sitting, do you know there's something called a Wi-Fi park? There are these parks in Surat where Reliance Jio gives free Wi-Fi and people will just come in the evening. That's one place we visited at some point. Just get there, meet people, meet players. Even if they don't play your game, show it to them, ask them to play it, see what they feel, and you'll find that people are actually very, very receptive about this. They want to talk to you, they want to give feedback, because it makes them feel special, it makes them feel heard. Really important, talk to players, validate everything you do. Next point, again, getting back to the poker thing, right? So we recently introduced Texas Hold'em poker into Teen Patti Gold. How many people here know how to play Texas Hold'em poker? Okay, most of the audience here, because, yeah, again, we live in these big tier 1 cities, we've been exposed to this culture, to this life. Most people aren't, right? And how I did this, it's my 4-step process. It's pretty simple once you break it down and crystallize it. It's have a clear goal, look at some references, identify the potential pain points for players. That's the hard part. It's not potential pain points for you or for anyone. It's for your target group, right? And the last one is just obvious. You got to get rid of them, right? And I'm going to go through the example of how I did that with poker for Teen Patti Gold. So the goal was pretty simple. It was, we wanted to introduce Teen Patti players to a new card game, an international card game called poker, right? They had never heard of it, they had never seen anything like it, and we had to somehow teach that to them and get them playing. Look at what exists. The best starting point here is your own game. Like, you have to know your game inside out. You need to know how the intricacies of your game work, what doesn't work, what is everything like. You look at other poker games. You look at other card games, you look at anything similar from the genre. You need a strong base, you need to have some ideas, and sometimes they'll come from you, sometimes they'll come from someone else. Look at other games, you might identify smaller things that they didn't do well, and it's just easy mistakes that you shouldn't repeat. The next one being identify potential pain points. These are some I identified. Right? Now the cards are more. How do we fit in that same UI, that same UX, that same space? How do we not make it overwhelming for the player? The hand ranks are completely different, right? And you might think this is a very small thing, but do you all of the people who play poker remember all the 10 hand rankings in order? Or do you all use that little cheat sheet on your mobile phone on the side? Right? Cheat sheet? Anyone? Yeah? Cheat sheet, see? Betting structure, again, completely different from Teen Patti. So, how did I fix any of these? Keeping the UI UX similar was one of the easier things to do, and it helped us eliminate that extra cards problem. Dimple from Moonfrog is giving a talk on casino game art, and if you want to know more about the art and the UI UX in Teen Patti, you can please attend that. Another thing we did was the FTUE, FTUE, depends on how you want to say it. You got to figure out the format that works the best. There are your force tutorials that actually walk a player through the game step by step by step. Now, what's the problem with that? It's drop-offs. You're going to see players not ending up going through the entire process, and right at the start or somewhere along the way, they're going to drop off and they're not going to play it anymore. So you need to do it in a way that suits your audience. For us, we figured out that way was a video, right? And you need to use words that they already understand. An example of this was the first time chips are raised in poker, it's called a bet. Every time after that, it's a raise. That extra terminology I felt it wasn't necessary. Adapt to what your players understand and extend on that. So in poker and Teen Patti Gold, it's only raises because that's a word they've already understand. It's a word they've been seeing in Teen Patti Gold, and it's a word they get. Right? Just to reiterate, this is a framework. You can use it to solve any problem when it comes to game development, right? Have a clear goal, look at references, identify the potential pain points for players, and eliminate them. Like, the folks at MechMocha are doing some pretty cool stuff with this jetpack joyride that they're translating. This might help them. I hope some of them are in the audience. This is the big one. Working with IPs, Bahubali and Alia Bhatt. Can anyone tell me what the difference between working with these two IPs was?
I think the difference would be in the kind of target audience that each of these IPs has to appeal to. If you can't do justice to its target audience, which is owned by the IP will see you as squandering their brand equity.
Sure, that totally makes sense. But what I'm trying to stress on here is, one is you're working with a movie, and one you're working with a celebrity. And how they're two very, very different things is what I'm going to be talking about here. When you're working with a movie, you need to follow suit to that integrity to the movie, and that often causes challenges in making a good, fun game, and it provides some limitations. Right? Bahubali, does it have flying units in the universe? No. But a strategy game, without flying units, it offers us as designers a lot of constraints and limitations in terms of developing strategies that players can learn and players can adapt to and actually have more fun while playing the game. Also taking things from the movie, like the lion claw gauntlet that Bahubali has, that's translated into the game. This is one of the special attacks that the hero character for Bahubali can do. The next one, when you're making a movie, is your release date is set in stone. There's nothing you can do about this. Like the Bahubali release date was 28th April. Of course, we want to release the game before that. Why? Because we want to ride that wave. Just along with all of that Bahubali press, all of that Bahubali hype, just want to ride that wave. And you need to do this, your release a little bit earlier. Why? Bugs, crashes. You need to make sure everything's stable because you don't want to miss out on that wave. Say on the first 3 days, you get 300,000 installs. Now, if your game has a crash rate of 20%, that word is going to spread like wildfire. Nobody's going to be downloading it. And all of your work, like months of hard work, just went down the drain. So, it's really, really important to know that your release date is set. And you know how game development is. It's done when it's done sometimes. And it's hard to keep track of timelines because of whatever reason. Diwali comes along, someone's sick. And you just need to push through in the end and get things done. The next one is, you're not really always going to have access to the movie. Like, we didn't know why Katappa killed Bahubali when we started making the game. What you need to do here is you need to have a good rapport with the production staff, right? Like here's Mark with the director and producer of Bahubali. We've had strong connections, strong ties with them from the inception of the game. And it just really helps along the way. It's a good avenue for you to bounce ideas off. They'll give you suggestions, feedback, and at the end, it's still their IP, right? So if you have a good connection with them, it just makes everything so much easier in terms of approvals, in terms of everything else. And how this is done, that I think you should ask Mark more a little bit about. But yeah. The next one, working with celebrities. They have the tightest schedule I have ever seen. Like, we've worked some 16-hour days for a week on length. But these guys, man, their schedules are like mad. So the year we were making Alia Bhatt Star Life, she was also acting in Kapoor & Sons, Badrinath Ki Dulhania, Udta Punjab, Dear Zindagi. 4 movies, 1 year. We're also making a game. And it becomes kind of impossible to find any time with the celebrity to figure things out. So how are you going to do that? Like, a bunch of people from our team actually traveled to the set of Dear Zindagi with a prototype and some bills. They just show it to her, get her initial feedback, get some approvals done. And know you're going to be working around their schedule. It's not them working around your schedule. It's more of a one-way street in this as opposed to a partnership, so that can kind of make things a bit tricky and tougher. Another thing that's easier said than done, sorry for art people earlier, but creating this art, this was our evolution actually for the Alia Bhatt character. From the left, that's where it started at. The first one is just, it's unrecognizable, and that's what we ended up with in the end. And how did we know that this was where we landed? We got external validation later when we were actually traveling with a cutout for a press conference, and everyone at the airport was like, oh, Alia Bhatt, and people were asking, oh, why are you carrying a giant cutout of this caricature of Alia Bhatt? And that was just a really nice feeling. So yeah, IPs. And what's the same between Bahubali and Alia Bhatt? They're both really, really big IPs. And as someone said in the audience earlier, you got to be prepared for the fans. Like, these guys are crazy. You're touching on their idols here. So if you do something wrong, if you do something that's out of key, they're really gonna lash out at you. And the last point is probably what y'all really, really want to know is it worth it? In a market that's more mature, definitely. It can be the difference between your game being a success and your game not being a success. And also, it just helps bolster all of the key numbers and KPIs that we're looking for: retention, DAU, installs, all of these things. An IP, especially an IP that works with your game genre and the target audience that this genre of games is played by. So it's not just, think of it, would you play a real-time strategy game with Disney Princess IP? That doesn't make much sense, right? So IP is totally worth it. Why did we choose to do this right now? We wanted to just test out the market, see where it lied in India right now, and we're figuring it out as we go. Getting to the 5th point, real-world events, right? You log into Facebook, they're going to tell you it's your birthday, they make these nice videos for you, that sort of stuff. And cadence is a big word that we hear thrown around in free-to-play design, and what exactly is that? It's releasing content in regular cycles to, again, help players retain better, to help engage players better, and basing your cadence and your new content updates on real-world events really helps with that, because it's a lot more relatable, right? So one really cool thing we actually did with Alia Bhatt Star Life, it's a small video I want to show you guys. Can you cue the video, please?
Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday!
Something just as simple as that. Like, was like 8 seconds long, the video, if I'm not mistaken. We experimented it, so just to see how much better it would be. For players that we showed it to, much better numbers. Players that we didn't show it to, not so great. So what did we do? Resolve that experiment. It was an easy one. So doing small things like this was one example from Alia Bhatt Star Life. On Baahubali, what did we do for this? Right? Independence Day came along. Your base building and base decoration is a big part of the game. So actually releasing the India flag and some other content themed around Independence Day for players to actually feel proud about decorating their base with these things. Again, experiment, really great. Real world events, because the reason they work so well is because players are invested in these things in the real world, when they see this kind of content in something that they're playing, it just reiterates that fact that, hey, this game is cool, it's doing some great stuff, it's keeping up to date, it actually cares about me, it's updating its content, it's refreshing everything. And on Teen Pati Goal, what did we do? IPL season came along. We did this small feature called Cricket Dhamaka, where you could put predictions on things, on games, like how many runs would be scored in this match, how many sixes would be hit in this match, that sort of thing. And if the players guessed correctly, they got a recording reward. And again, this actually, most people have seen this. IPL time, you're going to face like hits in terms of your numbers, retention, DAU, all of these things. Why? Because people are watching IPL. It's India, everyone loves cricket. And the IPL is a big, big source of entertainment. And this just helps smoothen that tide. And so we didn't face too much of a problem with the IPL this year. Okay, last thing, bonus point. Because again, one more thing that's important, you guys have been a great audience today, listen to everything, and this is just a reward for you guys, as well as you need to reward your players while doing all of your games. So this was something we made some time ago, Teen Patti Home, right? Anand told me this one thing at some point. Game designers are like Rahul Dravid. What does that mean? Yeah, we're always on the defensive. You know, you tell me, if you come and tell me, oh, that feature's really bad. Oh, it's not good at all. Oh, why did you do it that way? I'm gonna clam up. I'm gonna be defending it to like the last bit. And this is my point that I'm trying to make here. You need to know where to cut your losses. Teen Patti Home was something cool that we tried. This is what it looked like. It was a nice, casual, non-casino, non-gambling, family-friendly take. And you get attached to anything you work on, be it a game, be it whatever. You don't want to let go. And that's what's really, really important at some point. You need to understand where to cut ties, cut your losses, and just move on. Yeah, that's about it. We have some time for Q&A now, I guess. And please feel free to write to me at Chirag@Moonfrog if you have any questions.
What do you guys think? Questions?
Hi, I'm Nalin Savara from Delhi. My question is that this Alia Bhatt project and Bahubali project, were they like services projects, or were it that you earned revenue enough on it and you sort of paid to license the IPs? That's one. The second is that the birthday thing, Alia Bhatt says happy birthday. So for each player, it will happen on his or her birthday.
Correct.
So you watched it over a span of 1 year, that what percentage of players over a 1 year period sort of whom you sent a birthday greeting to were retained, and what percentage over a 1 year period were lost? You watched it over a span of how long?
That was just a short period of test time, a couple of weeks, but multiple people have birthdays in a couple of weeks, right? Mm-hmm. So we could just do the A/B test between the people who had the birthday that day, that we showed the video to, and the ones that we didn't show to. So we didn't wait the whole year, because that would take forever, right?
But you had some predictive analytic to measure that their rough amount of activity.
Yeah, we just looked at shorter term retention. We saw that it worked, and then we went with it. It was that definitive. So we didn't need to wait for months and months to test it out to see that it was working.
Okay, so people who installed it in the last couple of days and who have a birthday today, you wish them versus you don't wish them, and you
right.
see
just a strict A/B test. Just okay. Really strict A/B. Now on the other question, you talked about the licenses. Yeah, those were our own projects. We went and got the license for them. They were not a service project, and so yeah, we earn the revenue and we pay a fee to the artists in the case of the movie. There's one thing else I want to share, a little clarification on the point, the difference between Alia and the movie. With the movie team, everything they were doing was aimed towards the launch of that movie. All the PR, everything, and all we needed to do is get aligned with them on the PR for the launch date. So it was very easy. And Chirag brought this up. With Alia, we were one of her many projects. And so that's a fundamental difference. Now, she was a great partner, and she made time for us, and she did the videos for us, and we talked to her, and she had a lot of feedback. But there's just a difference there, and you have to, as you're working on IPs, you just got to be aware of that. And that was a new lesson for me. I'd worked on casino game before, licensed in the US, Lord of the Rings game with New Line Cinema. And so this is the first time I ever worked directly with a single celebrity. So that was a big lesson. So just something that we wanted to share as people are thinking about this, right?
Got it. Thanks a lot, Mark. And thanks a lot, Chirag.
Other questions, guys? Speak up. Anybody in the back got a question? No?
Anyone else? I mean, this is an opportunity. After this, you're not going to get Mark's time or Chirag's time. So, just saying, if you want to ask questions, this is the time. Yeah, go for it.
Hello everyone, my name is Sagar. I am from Pune. Question is, you're talking about making games for India. So, if it was not an IP, what would you suggest? Like currently, we have Alia Bhatt as an IP, and people would go for downloads. And Bahubali is also one of those. So if it was not an IP, how do you see that?
Okay, if you're not making IP games and you're trying to make games for India, that's a tough nut to crack right now.
I'll jump in. Yeah. So here's the approach that we are taking. We use those two IPs as a shortcut. I had to learn a lot about the market coming here. You know, things you guys take for granted, I don't see. It's fresh and new to me. So when you're thinking about this and some of the new experiments that we're doing, that idea that finding situations, storylines, environments that connect with people. I like to use the example that even though it's the first time they've seen it, they still remember it. So think about when you're watching, let's translate this into films for a second, right? How do you make a film that applies to the Indian audience? There's certain themes, storylines, genres that work. So we do the same kind of thing. And that's what I suggest. Now there's also gameplay that works. Right? So there's a little bit different than a movie. There's certain type, and you see that with TPG. You see that with other games like Ludo and those kind of things. Yeah. So I think one key thing is I use the expression, you know, more and more. Everybody in India, you're like fish that don't see the water, right? So I have the lucky benefit that I come in and say, well, what is this funky storyline about a father-in-law not liking the son-in-law, something like that? That's kind of a new thing for me. But you guys all know it and see it, and it's obvious to you. So take a moment and just try to step out of your shoes and see everything that's going around you, right? See the day-to-day, and there's your themes, there's your storylines, and then the gameplay, right? More questions. Someone's got to have a question. Go ahead. Here comes the mic room. The man who gets the most exercise of the day. Thanks.
My question is that, what underlying platform or technology middleware did you use to make the game? Because and to what extent did size affect some of your gameplay and design choices as well as your timeline?
Great
and
question.
What was the timeline like?
Great question. You want to talk about TV?
Yeah. On the size thing, actually, with Baahubali, there's another talk later by Hari on shaders and how we optimized everything to fit into what was the Baahubali build size?
The smallest size on Bahubali was under 20 MB.
20 MB,
yeah.
right? And it's important to keep these sizes small because at least at where we are right now with the Indian audience, everyone's just getting a new smartphone. A lot of people are getting their first smartphone, and these things don't have the largest amount of size on disk. Download sizes have gotten less of a problem because of Reliance Jio and the availability of internet. It's still, you can't release a 1 GB game and expect to get a lot of downloads out of it. But it's getting a little bit better. Size on disk is a very big problem that you still need to worry about.
So one of the things I suggest, you know, as technologists and game makers, we all like to carry around the latest hardware, you know, Google Pixel 2 XL, awesome. But I also carry around my 2-year-old Samsung Duos. This guy holds one game. And this is 18 months ago, this was the phone that most TPG players used, right? So like Chirag was talking about, go talk to the audience, find out what they are. When I download a game on here, it means I have to get rid of the game that I already had, right? So these are the kind of things that our audience are facing. So the 20 MB on Baahubali, incredibly important. It helped, but it came at trade-offs. We had to reduce the quality of the graphics for that version. And then we had to solve the problem of when you have the reduced quality graphics, you got to make sure that the people who have the reduced phones get it and not the people who have the high-end phones. Because if you mix up the configuration and the people who have the, you know, the Pixel XL suddenly get the LD version, it looks bad. and then they say the game looks bad, right? So there's trade-offs on that. There's trade-offs on audio as well. All kinds of things. And you know, we use Cocos too. So we didn't use Unity. I used Unity on a different project. It was too big. The baseline Unity executable size we used on Empires and Allies was 25 megabytes. The whole Bahubali game was less than 20. And TPG as well, right? The slowest size in TPG?
The lowest size was 8.
8.
What is TPG?
Team Party Gold.
Team Party Gold.
Yeah. More questions? Go ahead here first, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, this is Archita from Nagana. Am I audible?
Louder.
Am I audible now?
Say that again?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, with a movie like Bahubali and the various other movies, there is always a lot of traction when the movie is getting released, and there's a lot of marketing things happening around the movie, and hence the game stickiness or the people trying out this game might be more. But how do you ensure that post this as well, like post all the marketing hoopla around it as well, there are enough number of players on games like Bahubali? Because Alia Bhatt, I could understand it's a celebrity related game, like a cricketer related game, so there will be a kind of fan following which will always be on those games. But what about the movie gaming IP? Are you still finding that kind of traction on it?
That's an excellent question. And here's, when you pick up a movie IP, and it's not just Bahubali, it's anything, you have to consider the longevity of the IP. Yeah, so we have Bahubali 1, Bahubali 2, right? Is there going to be a 3? We don't know, but there's a lot of discussion. So that's a very deep IP. Same thing with like Lord of the Rings, right? Or looking at Star Wars universe, right? So you have to be careful, because if you pick an IP that just is a one-off, you are going to get the pop and drop. You're going to get a huge number of downloads as it's getting closer to the movie releases. If the movie doesn't do that good, your downloads are going to sink exactly at the same rate of the movie, right? Now, what do you do, right? Because obviously you want a game that lasts a while. The best advice that I have is make a good game, right? You've seen this in other movie-related games where they're very thin, they're almost like advertising games. They're up a day and then they're gone because there's no longevity to the gameplay itself. So, one of the things we learned way back when we did the Lord of the Rings game at EA is we created a game that had great fundamental play that let people live in the Lord of the Rings universe in a way they couldn't do anywhere else. The same thing here with Bahubali, right? And so when you create that, then if you got fans of the IP, they'll stay there and they'll keep playing it. Now, there's another weirdness that happens with a big IP. Bahubali worked really well as a match 3 game, not for the fans who want to do battles and play action, right? So it's kind of pick which audience and pick which genre and go for it, and just creating a great game out of it.
Sure, thank you.
Sure. Somebody in the back, kind of questions? Way in the back. Awesome. Got some electricity?
Right. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
Sums up with your mic, I think.
Fame of the IP itself affect the design of the game, and are there any restrictions that you faced with the IP that affected that, and vice versa?
So the great question, I think the fame of the IP obviously plays into it, and in an indirect way. And I can talk about a couple of stories about Lord of the Rings, for example, with New Line Cinema. I started working on a strategy game, and it was after the first 2 movies released. There were huge hits, and what had happened is by that point, the movie director and everything had been kind of secluded off to work on the 3rd film, and as we were talking about approvals, we had to go to a whole different licensing group in New York City as opposed to the filmmakers in New Zealand. And that became a very weird approval process because we were getting approvals from not the creator, but from the staff, the administrative staff, who were sitting in an office approving, here's the feature of your game, and this is how Aragorn should look in the action figure, and by the way, here's a coffee coaster for your table, that has, you know, a Sauron on it, and so it was a very different approval process, right? So that's one way that it affects it. And then they came up with whatever rules that they wanted, and we had to live with them. Now Bahubali is much different. We were dealing right with the creators, not the licensed folks and the administrators, and so we got to hear very directly what the director wanted. And of course, when you're working on it, you have to come from the position of respecting their IP deeply. You have to respect it as much or more than they do because it's their baby, right? And so that's the approach that I take to do that. And it works out well. When they see your respect and understand that you want to help deliver their vision in a new format, then it works.
Yeah, because we take the mic back there, it's clashing with mics from the other side, some random thing, sorry. Yeah. We'll distribute the exercise evenly, yeah? Sorry about that, yeah.
So me and my friend, we made our first 3D game. So what do you say about 3D games? Because personally I feel that in the App Store, 3D games are really common, and what really stands out is a good looking 2D game with catchy graphics. So even the game you made, Bahubali, it had 2D graphics, right? Yeah, so what I feel is that I think 2D games fare better in the App Store because if you have a more catchy graphics game which is 2D, it stands out more compared to the thousands of 3D games on the market. So...
You want? Okay, Fred. Okay, I'll take it. So having made 2D games, 3D games, seen the transition from 2D to 3D, and then gone back again, what I know is each technology offers strengths and weaknesses. And each technology has its place in time in the progression of the industry. Until either the team or the device can do amazing real-time, full 30 frames a second, no trouble with download sizes or anything like that in 3D, I choose to stay with 2D. And it's just because, to your point, you can get the best entertainment experience there. Now, if you're working on a 3D game and you love it and you want to keep doing it, hey, keep going, right? The industry, the devices will eventually catch up to it.